Here is the entire saga of bizarre cartoon ripoffs, from shameless clones and low-budget DVDs to legal battles and YouTube controversies. Let's get into it. Peppa Pig versus Wolfoo and Friends. Peppa Pig is a gentle British preschool series about a 4-year-old pig, her little brother George, and their parents, all living in a flat pastel world where each 5-minute story is a tiny slice of family life. Playgroup, muddy puddles, trips with grandparents, and simple social lessons. Its super simple art style, instantly recognizable character shapes, and a massive toy empire turned it into one of the biggest preschool brands on the planet. Wolfoo, made in Vietnam, follows a young wolf with a baby sibling and parents in a nearly identical kids plus parents in a simple house. Setup using short episodes, bright 2D designs, and everyday moral lessons aimed at exactly the same age range. The similarities, family structure, proportions, and even certain props in the background pushed Peppa's owner, now part of Hasbro, to accuse Wolfoo of being more than just inspired. Legal filings claim some audio and visual elements were closely imitated, and that Wolfoo's whole look and feel was designed to ride on Peppa's success, while the Vietnamese studio insists its characters are original and culturally distinct. This turned into a global IP saga. Lawsuits were filed in the UK and Russia, a wave of takedown requests hit YouTube, and around 2,000 Wolfoo videos reportedly vanished from the platform, costing the channel's huge ad revenue and visibility. What makes it even wilder is that courts haven't agreed with each other. UK judges ruled that British courts are the right place to hear Peppa's claims, because the show and its goodwill were built there and the alleged damage is to a UK brand. In Russia, however, a key case went the other way and ordered Peppa's side to cover Wolfoo's legal costs, and more recent decisions in Europe have granted Wolfoo trademark protection across EU countries, treating it as a distinct brand rather than a mere clone. So this isn't just a simple bootleg versus original story, it's a slow-motion legal brawl over where the line between inspiration and imitation actually sits. And before this turns into the first courtroom cinematic universe, hit subscribe so the only thing getting copied around here is your habit of coming back for more episodes, not your favorite cartoons. Bluey versus Chip Chilla. Bluey exploded out of Australia by doing something deceptively simple. Take a family of cartoon dogs, then show them using imagination to turn boring adult chores into huge games that feel emotionally real to both kids and parents. Episodes about brushing teeth, bedtime, or grocery shopping morph into elaborate pretend play with rules, stakes, and little gut-punch moments of sincerity, all wrapped in warm, expressive animation. That mix of kid fun and honest parenting turned Bluey from a niche Aussie import into a global comfort show. Chip Chilla arrived later with a blue rodent in a very similar world. Small, soft-edged characters, a cozy house, and stories that start with ordinary activities and quickly hyperinflate into fantasy adventures led by the kids. Fans online were fast to point out how the color of the main character, the nuclear family layout, and the pattern of normal task becomes big game echo Bluey's DNA a little too neatly. Some viewers see it as a localized, budget-friendlier riff that tries to bottle the same magic for a different audience, while others argue that the staging, tone, and character types lean so hard on Bluey that it feels more like remixing than inventing. Either way, it's become one of the clearest examples of how a breakout preschool hit can spawn near-twins that sit right on the edge between homage and ripoff. Adventure Time versus Legend of Lucky Pie. Adventure Time broke out by committing fully to weirdness and heart at the same time. Finn and his shape-shifting dog Jake roamed the land of meeting candy kingdoms, cursed swords, post-apocalyptic relics, and deeply broken side characters, all drawn in a loopy, rubbery style that looks simple until a fight scene lands or an emotion hits. Underneath the nonsense jokes and non-sequitur quests, the show quietly builds a huge mythology about war, loss, and growing up. And that depth is a big part of why it reshaped Western TV animation. Legend of Lucky Pie, a Chinese web series, pairs a boy and his animal companion and sends them wandering through bright fantasy landscapes full of odd creatures and episodic mini-quests. On first contact, many fans basically saw Adventure Time from another dimension. Similar proportions, similar way characters move and emote, and even jokes that feel timed in a familiar way. That led to accusations of it being a direct ripoff, especially once comparison images started circulating. But later coverage and fan re-evaluations softened a bit, pointing out that the tiny team behind it had almost no budget and seemed genuinely interested in telling their own offbeat stories using a style that clearly inspired them. Today, you'll still find people calling it a knockoff, but you'll also find others defending it as a scrappy homage that slowly finds more of its own voice. Gumball versus Miracle Star. The Amazing World of Gumball is already one of the strangest looking kids shows ever made. 2D characters share the frame with CG models, stop-motion creatures, and real-world photos all dumped into a single suburban town that plays like a parody of modern life. Each episode is packed with meta-jokes, fast dialogue, and fourth wall breaks, and the show's distinct visual mashup is a huge part of why it's instantly recognizable in a single screenshot. Miracle Star also follows a blue kid protagonist, but this time he's a goat living with a frog best friend in a world that, in certain shots, looks suspiciously like Elmore with the serial numbers filed off. Fans have compiled side-by-side videos where character poses, background layouts, and even whole gags track Gumball episodes almost frame for frame, which is why its reputation quickly solidified as one of the most blatant TV cartoon ripoffs ever. Cartoon Network didn't just ignore it. They clapped back with an in-universe episode called The Copycats, where Gumball and Darwin meet obvious parodies of Miracle Star's cast and tear into how lazy imitation misses the point of creativity. That episode basically turned the ripoff into canon, and Miracle Star's short run plus heavy online mockery cemented it as the textbook "Don't do this" warning in discussions about copying animated shows. SpongeBob vs. Coconut Fred. SpongeBob SquarePants is built around one of the most powerful cartoon engines ever, an unstoppable optimist in a bizarre workplace and a weird town, surrounded by supporting characters who each represent a different flavor of comedy. Bikini Bottom's mix of nautical nonsense, workplace satire, and surreal joke timing made it almost endlessly memeable and kept it relevant across multiple generations of kids and teens. Coconut Fred's Fruit Salad Island tries to punch into the same space by swapping the underwater city for a tropical island and turning the sponge into an equally manic coconut who pulls a cast of talking fruits into loud, chaotic adventures. On paper, that's different enough. In practice, a lot of viewers felt the show was SpongeBob but louder and grosser, with the same hyper-cheerful, reality-breaking lead dragging more cynical side characters into trouble. Instead of clever timing, emotional undercurrents, or layered jokes adults could enjoy, Coconut Fred leaned on yelling and randomness, and it only lasted a short time before getting axed. These days, it mainly shows up in video essays and commentaries as proof that copying SpongeBob's surface energy without his writing depth is a fast way to end up infamous rather than beloved. Kung Fu Panda versus the Little Panda Fighter. Kung Fu Panda follows Po, a clumsy panda who works in his father's noodle shop and dreams of martial arts greatness until he is accidentally chosen as the Dragon Warrior, forcing him into serious training with the Furious Five. The movie's big charm comes from the contrast between Poe's fanboy goofiness and the genuine, beautifully animated kung fu set pieces, plus themes of self-belief and finding strength in your own supposed weaknesses. It was so successful it spawned sequels, TV series, and a ton of merch. The Little Panda Fighter from Brazilian studio Video Brinquedo leans on an eerily similar elevator pitch. A chubby panda stuck in a fighting venue who actually wants to dance, but keeps being pushed toward the ring. Where Kung Fu Panda invests in lush visuals and strong character arcs, the Little Panda Fighter is infamous for stiff animation, off-model characters, and a story that feels like it was built mainly to get a panda and a boxing ring on the DVD cover. It arrived close enough to DreamWorks' hit that many people treat it as a classic mockbuster. An imitation made cheaply and quickly, meant to ride on brand confusion for parents and kids browsing bargain bins. Cars vs. Caros/Carrinhos. Pixar's Cars follows Lightning McQueen, an overconfident race car who gets stranded in Radiator Springs and slowly learns that community, mentorship, and friendship matter more than trophies. Beyond the story, the movie was engineered as a toy machine. Car characters with big eyes, clean silhouettes, and a whole highway town of side characters kids could own as die-casts, playsets, and betting sets. Caros, often marketed as Carrinhos, is Video Brinquedo's answer. A direct-to-DVD movie where talking cars live in a small town, with a focus on racing and everyday vehicle life that feels very familiar if you have ever watched even a few minutes of Cars. The animation is flatter, the design's more generic, and the world lacks the detailed environmental storytelling that made Radiator Springs feel like a real place. But the overall concept is close enough that it clearly aims to sit next to Pixar's film in cheap racks and hope grandma picks it up by mistake. Among animation fans, it now stands as one of the clearest examples of the mockbuster model. Copy the basic hook and visual idea, change names just enough to dodge lawsuits, and hope confusion does the rest. Beyond its TV, bootleg Disney, and more. Once you start looking for them, whole shelves and streaming menus are full of look-alike animated movies that mimic Disney and Pixar hits, princess tales with suspiciously familiar gowns, animal epics with almost matching poster compositions, and CGI critters that look like they've taken a one-way trip through the uncanny valley. These projects are often made on a fraction of the budget, but they spend what they have imitating the marketing language of blockbusters. Similar fonts, similar color schemes, and titles that sound close enough to make you pause. Analysts usually group them under the mockbuster label, and they're not limited to kids' movies. Horror, superhero, and sci-fi all get the same treatment. The goal is almost never to build a long-term brand. It's to hit the shelves fast when a big studio releases something huge, then quietly cash in on a wave of momentary confusion and impulse buys. In a weird way, they're proof of how powerful iconic animation design is. The more recognizable a style becomes, the more profitable it is for someone else to copy it as closely as they can get away with. Are ripoffs always bad? The ripoff spectrum is wide. On one end are shows that feel like lazy traces, same silhouettes, same jokes, sometimes even echoes of audio, where it is hard to argue there is much creativity involved. On the other end are projects that start by wearing their influences on their sleeves, but gradually mix in local culture, new side characters, and fresh story structures, eventually earning a niche fandom that values them for what they became, not just what they copied. But as the Peppa vs. Wolfoo saga shows, once lawyers and courts step in, public debate is no longer just about vibes. It's about how the law defines originality, confusion, and unfair competition in a world where content jumps borders instantly. For viewers, though, the line usually feels simpler. If a show brings new heart, perspective, or craft to its inspiration, audiences are more forgiving. If it only photocopies the surface, it gets dragged, memed, and quietly buried under the originals it tried to imitate.